I'm going to show you how you can create double exposures in Photoshop by layering two photos together. So for this example, I'm just using two photos that I've downloaded from pexels.com. So basically, I'm going to merge these two photos together. So I'm going to use the move tool to drag this photo on top of this one. And I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go Command T and drag it out until it fills up the whole space, and then press tick. I'm going to make these black and white just so they kind of match and merge together a bit nicer. So I'm going to go and add a black and white adjustment layer on the top. If you decide that you wanted just the top layer to be black and white to retain color in the bottom layer, you can hold the Option or Alt key down between those two layers, and that links that adjustment layer. So it only makes that layer that it's hooked up to black and white. So then if I made that opacity down, you'll see that you can still see the color. You need to be clicked on layer 1 before you adjust it, but you can see that you can still see the color underneath the other photo. But for this instance, I'm actually going to make the whole lot black and white. So I'm going to just hold down the Option key and remove the link there so that the whole lot is black and white. So there's a few ways to do this. I could lower the opacity of the top layer, so just make sure you're clicked on that layer, not your adjustment layer, and then you can see what's happening underneath. I'm actually going to go in using a layer mask tool to erase out parts that I don't want in there. So again, I'm going to make sure I'm clicked on layer 1. I'm going to click on the layer mask tool down here, and then I'm going to use my paintbrush and have it set to black and white. If it's on some other random colors, you can just default it back to black and white by pressing that little button there. And then you've got these arrows here which change it from black to white. So when it's set to black, it acts as an eraser. So you'll be able to see the photo come through underneath. I'm just going to move the opacity back up so it's more obvious on that layer. But you'll now see that as I erase, you will start to see the photo of her starting to show through underneath. It's being a bit slow and sluggish at the moment, sorry. If you decide you've erased too much, you can actually go in and flick it to white, and it will then actually put the photo back in. So if you decide, actually, I don't want that much of her showing, you can change it. My opacity is down to 18, that's why it's not erasing very strongly. So if I turn that up to 100, it's actually going to be a lot more obvious. So basically that's how it started. If I flick it to black, it's going to erase the top layer so you can see her underneath. Again, I've erased too much. I can't even see the people now. So I want to flick it back to white, and I can change my opacity of the brush, and then you will start to be able to see the people come through. So it's basically you just deciding how much you want to be showing through. If I want to get rid of all the clouds and stuff from around the side of her face, I can actually turn that back up to 100. I'm going to make the brush a bit smaller by using the brackets on the keyboard beside the P, and you can actually come around and erase things from there so you can see underneath. So if I go to black, it's going to erase all the clouds out from in the sky, and I can get rid of the water around her face if I wanted to, like that. And then I might decide to make it a bit lighter and just get rid of some of the water that's around her face there. And yeah, so that's one way of merging two photos together. Again, flick it back to white if you've done a bit too much, and you can just have a play around with what you think's working by flicking between the two. You can actually continue to edit your photo. So if you decide you want to do a few other things, you can, and you've still got the ability to come back and keep changing your erasing by simply clicking back on layer 1. But the important thing is here is to make sure you click back onto the layer mask here, and you'll see there's a little white border around it now, and that will allow you to keep erasing or adding the photo back in, or vice versa, whichever you're wanting to do. If you're not clicked on the layer mask tool here, say you were clicked on that, what's going to happen is it's just going to simply paint black or white paint, because it's just basically acting as a paintbrush. So it means you're going to just be adding black paint or white paint. So you don't want to do that. So I'm just going to go back in my history. So just make sure you're clicked on the layer mask tool there so the white border appears in order for you to be acting as using the paintbrush to act as a layer mask tool again. When you are wanting to save this work, remember you've got a couple of options here. If you go File, Save As, it's going to save it automatically as a Photoshop file, which is good because it means you can reopen this in Photoshop another time and all your layers will still be there. So you can go ahead and save it that way. If you're wanting to save it in order to email it or add to a Google slide or something like that, we need to actually save it as a JPEG so it flattens all those layers. So instead you're going to go File, Save a Copy, and then you can change the format to JPEG. And that'll mean, if you look down at the layers here, it'll mean now that it's just one flat layer. And you always make sure it's maximum file size so it's the best quality, unless you're wanting it to email it to someone, in which case you might want a bit of a smaller file size. But you'll see that all your it saves it as a JPEG, so it flattens your layers as a copy. Cool, but you've still got your original photo here with all your layers in it because it didn't save over the original version. It's just saved a copy of it. Cool. I will also show you another way you could have potentially layered these photos together by selecting around the person. So you could go to your object selection tool or whichever way you want to do it, but I prefer that one for this one. Object selection tool, and then draw a box around the person. And it should pick her up pretty well because there's a white background behind her. It's going to struggle a little bit with all those wispy bits of hair. But basically, if you wanted to have her with a different background behind her, you could go Layer, New, Layer via Copy. And you'll see now that it's created a layer of her separate to the background. You could then come in and delete the background layer now. So just select it and then press delete on your keyboard. And then down here, we can click on this little button and go solid color. And you could either choose a white or a black or a gray or a cream, whatever color you want to do. And then go okay. And then at the moment it's on top of layer 1. So we just want to drag this so it's underneath it. And now you'll see that you've got her as her own layer happening here. So then you could again come in with another photo if you wanted to. Again, I'll make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to make it black and white. And here, what we can do, if we want to erase everything that's around her, if we just hide that layer for a second and go back to her, we could just quickly select around her again so she's selected. And then once we've done that, we're going to invert the selection. So at the moment, she's going to be selected, but we want all the background selected. So if we go select, inverse, and then if we show the top layer again, so press that little eye again, and if we're clicked on that top layer, because we've got all the background around her selected, we can actually just press delete now, and it's going to get rid of all of that background automatically. Then we can go Command D to deselect it. And then again, you've got some tricks here. You can either use your opacity, you could have a go at using some of these blending options down here, or you could go in with your layer mask again, that one there, and use your black and white paintbrush to kind of bring her back into parts or get rid of parts, whatever you want to do. So that's 2 ways of doing it. This way here, she is a little bit cut out looking. So I could have, back in the step when I'd selected her, I could have feathered her a little bit to sort of soften the edges. But I'll talk to you about that a little bit more in another tutorial. But there's always a few ways you can merge layers together using these layer mask paintbrush techniques.